you all for coming to this supplemental training on bringing order from chaos. This is a primer on parliamentarian procedures. In this session, you're going to look at principles behind parliamentary procedures, the steps for considering a motion, some basic types of motions that you encounter. And this is going to be presented by Distinguished Toastmaster Roger Pritchett, who's our past 43 governor, 2006, 2007, and the current district parliamentarian. When Roger Pritchett first joined Toastmasters, he wasn't sure what he needed. He had some hopes to improve his communication skills. After 28 years, he has gained that and much more. Most of all, Toastmasters gave him confidence, not all at once, but over time. It helped with communication skills, but also with leadership. In those 28 years, Roger has earned 2 DTM awards and is working on a third. He has served in every club and district office, including district governor 2006-2007. He is currently serving as Vice President of Education for Little Rock Toastmasters, where he has been a member since 1998. He is also the district parliamentarian. Roger has been married for 44 years to Karen, and they have 3 adult children and 3 biologicals and 4 foster grandchildren. He has served as a classroom teacher, a minister, and a missionary. He currently helps people with their Medicare insurance. He loves training. He loves training opportunities like this one. He wants to see many people enjoy the benefits of Toastmasters and wants to help other clubs and members to thrive. So we are so happy to have Roger Pritchett bring us the parliamentarian procedure. Please put your hands together and extend a warm, warm round of applause to Distinguished Toastmaster Roger Pritchett.
Thanks so much, Lisa. I appreciate it very much. I'm glad to be here. Glad for those of you who are able to be here. And as I was saying before this session started, I am not concerned at all with the number of people here. If I would have enjoyed doing this with just 2 people, because I just want to help people learn parliamentary procedure. I believe it helps us do better overall. And this is what it's about. It's about bringing order from chaos. Probably all of us have sat in a meeting where you felt like you were just spinning your wheels. Not much was happening. And that is so very frustrating. Or perhaps people were talking over one another. One person couldn't get a complete thought out before they were interrupted. It's just a real problem. Parliamentary procedure, using rules of order, helps that a lot. So hopefully after tonight, you're going to be able to do a little bit better at all of this. Oh dear. Well, I can't get my screen to move. That's a problem. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Parliamentary procedure is really nothing to be afraid of. A lot of people are afraid of it. They hear stories or they've seen bad examples of parliamentary procedure. It is possible to use parliamentary procedure in a bad way. Just about anything that's good can be used in a bad way. But if it's used properly, and especially in the spirit that we're going to use it in Toastmasters, it's really a good thing and not anything to be worried about. My screen is going very, very slow. I don't know what the problem is. Let me see if I can stop sharing and fix this. Oh dear. I'm not doing all of this. It's operating on its own. That's scary. Well, the next slide, I think it'll come up here in just a minute. The next slide it asks the questions, why? Why use parliamentary procedure? Well, another term for parliamentary procedure is rules of order. And its purpose is just that, to bring order to meetings so that they can be effective. Rules of order allow a group to express its will appropriately. So whenever you have a group of people coming together, that group as a whole wants to try to accomplish something. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a group, right? And so parliamentary procedure provides some standardization. It provides some rules. It provides some order so that the group can actually accomplish its purpose. So the rules of order protect the rights of several different groups. It protects the rights of the majority, and that's why we say in parliamentary procedure, majority rules. But it protects the rights of the minority too, because certain things can't happen within parliamentary procedure so that the minority doesn't feel like they're just run over. Also, parliamentary procedure protects the rights of individual members. It makes sure that members are able to operate according to these rules, and the rules are the same for everybody. And then finally, parliamentary procedure helps with absentees. So sometimes we're afraid to miss a meeting because of what might happen while we're not there. Have you ever had that experience? For example, I've been in a meeting before where someone who wasn't there was nominated for an office. Can y'all still hear me? It looks like my screen is freezing a little bit. Okay, we're still good? Okay. But
Yes, we can hear you.
and you don't want that to happen. You don't want people to be afraid to miss a meeting, to be absent because something bad might happen. So parliamentary procedure helps with that too. Our own district director, Jackie Hauser, has a quote, and I'm trying to get my slides to move forward. There we go. Keeping order is the mark of a good leader. People will follow. And you've probably experienced that too, because when you're in a meeting where there is not any good order, then you kind of wonder about the effectiveness of the leader there. So keeping order is the mark of a good leader. Parliamentary procedure helps us to be good leaders. Now we're going to talk about the what of parliamentary procedure. And hopefully my screen will catch up with me here in a minute. Most people, when they think about parliamentary procedure, they think about Robert's Rules of Order. And that's the most used and best known here in the United States. But did you know that there are other rules of order too? For example, there's one called Jefferson's Manual. That's used in our United States Congress. There's the Westminster Rules of Order. Those are used in European countries, other places in the world. And then there's a tiny little book that I can't find my copy of. I had it many years ago. It's called the Democratic Rules of Order. It's a simplified version of Robert's Rules. And so Robert's Rules of Order is just one of the various types of parliamentary procedure, one of the rules of order that you can use. Now let's, by the way, when we talk about Robert's Rules of Order, I'm trying to get my screen to change here and it's just really not doing well. I don't know what the problem is. This is a new computer too. But the fellow who started Robert's Rules of Order, his name was General Henry M. Robert. That is no S. And that's why it's called Robert's Rules of Order, the possessive of Robert. And his first edition of that Rules of Order was published in 1873, looking at my notes here. And we're now on the 12th edition of Robert's Rules of Order. And it's 640 pages of closely spaced type. So it's a lot to learn, and it's for that reason that some people are kind of scared of it. But I'm here tonight to try to help us remove some of that fear. And so as we get started, I want to suggest to you that there are some basics of effective meetings. And as Toastmasters, we want to have effective meetings. Let's do this. I want to ask you, have you ever participated in a waterfall on chat? Perhaps if you've seen this presentation before, you have. What I'd like you to do is to open up your chat. And I want you to type in there some problems that you've experienced with a meeting before. Examples of bad meetings, or maybe it's a pet peeve you have with meetings. Okay, now go ahead and start typing in the chat, but don't click enter yet. What I want you to do is I'm going to give you about a minute here to type in your pet peeve or your example of bad things that happen in a meeting. And then at the same time, we're all going to press enter. And so then in the chat, you'll see a waterfall of ideas come down. Now I'm going to try again to stop my screen sharing.
I have a quick idea. I'm not
Yes.
sure if you share your slides with myself or maybe Lisa, and then they might be able to utilize it.
Oh, I see. That's a good idea. Well, hang on then just a second. if y'all can still hear me, I'm a little worried that this is going to be too big to share. Now,
Have you put it on a Google Drive? It might show better off of that one.
so Michelle, what is your email? And let me try sending it to you.
Let's see. Put it in the chat. Send it to you. I sent it in the chat.
Okay. All right, let me try that real quick. I'm going to step out for just a moment.
Tanisha, would you like to stop the recording?
Why don't we stop for just a minute?
Yeah, I can.
Ready? You can do the waterfall now. And you're printing you're showing your ideas. Only 3 ideas came up. What were they? There's 4. Give us a few of them, Charlene.
Okay. The first one, it says the person interrupting the speaker speaking too long without breaking for questions. People multitasking, multitasking and not paying attention when their name is called and asking for the question to be repeated. Meeting going overtime is one of the things that happens, and talking while others are talking.
Good. Yes, those are all problems, aren't they?
Yes.
I am just having so much trouble sharing my screen this time. I can't believe this. Y'all can't see my screen, can you?
No. But there's more to
There
the
we go.
waterfall.
There we go. We got
There you
it.
go.
There you go. Just before you started, please, there's more on the waterfall. No agenda, no minutes, low participation, knowing what to vote on, people who are not, I guess, not there, and no agenda. Seems to be really a problem, Roger.
Right. Yes, and all of those things can happen. And so I want to give you some suggestions for having effective meetings. And that is number 1, start on time. Of course, in Toastmasters, we typically do that anyway. Most meetings that I go to, Toastmasters meetings, they do start on time. But if whatever kind of meeting it is, whether it's a business meeting or a brainstorming meeting, or it's the meeting of some organization, you need to know the purpose of that meeting. And everyone there needs to know the purpose, so that then you work to stay on task during that meeting. And then finally, you want to work to come to a conclusion. What's more frustrating than spending a long time going round and round with ideas, but you never quite come to a conclusion. So that's a real problem. So I have a hobby horse that I ride regarding effective meetings, and that is preparation. At least one person, the chair, needs to really work on preparation. And just by having that one person to be really prepared can make a lot of difference in a meeting. A little preparation goes a long way. And so if you're the chair of a meeting, then send reminders of the meeting so that people, whoever needs to be there, knows they need to be there. And send an agenda in advance. I will sometimes send an agenda with notes. So if there's a particular item on the agenda that needs some special attention, then give some notes about it so that people can be thinking about it. And then another important idea on effective meetings is to check on your key contributors. So if there's someone who's going to be making a presentation during that meeting, make sure they're ready, make sure they know how long they have. When I was district director, back then it was district governor, I would put on the agenda the amount of time that a particular person could have in that meeting. And I think that really helps for people to know things like that. And so that means you're going to need to get with people ahead of time and find out, well, how much time do you need? Well, I need 20 minutes. You can't have 20 minutes, but I can give you 10. Can you do it in 10? So really work to hone that down, to get that idea down, because you want to keep the meeting moving. Now let's get to some ideas for actually using parliamentary procedure. And let me try to share my screen again. All right. I'm going to do it this way. This isn't the best way, but I think this will work better. So most organizations have some standards to which they must adhere, especially if it's a registered corporation or a registered organization. Then they have a corporate charter or they have a certificate of incorporation. They may have, it may be called articles of incorporation. And these are what give the right to form that organization. So especially if you want to be a nonprofit organization or a for-profit organization, you want to have this corporate charter or these articles of incorporation. And those articles, those charters, give the organization its purpose. Then, besides the articles of incorporation, organizations can have a constitution or bylaws or both. So for example, with Toastmasters, we have a club constitution and we have some Toastmasters bylaws that we use. And this is the case with most organizations. And usually in the bylaws, it will give the authority for rules when the bylaws don't cover it. So if you have bylaws, the bylaws control. Anything the bylaws talk about controls the way that organization is to operate. But you can't put every consequence, you can't put every type of situation that's ever going to occur in bylaws. And so then most bylaws will say where the bylaws don't cover a situation, then you use, for example, Robert's Rules of Order. And that's what we're going to be talking about here as we go on. And so just think for a minute, where can you use parliamentary procedure? I've abbreviated it Parli-Pro for short. Well, of course, we can use it in Toastmasters. You can use it in your gardening club. You can use it with just about any kind of organization. Now, Parli-Pro is not designed really for a brainstorming meeting. It's not really designed for a small committee that's meant to come up with suggestions for things, although there are elements of parliamentary procedure that you can use, but primarily for formalized meetings. Then parliamentary procedure gives you those rules to go by that will help you to operate effectively. All right, so here we go. Parliamentary procedure, one of the key terms is the idea of quorum, which is the minimum needed to conduct business. And when you have that rule for quorum, the minimum number to conduct business, it gives a sense of fairness and right. So for example, if you had a club of 20 people, but then at a particular meeting, only 3 people were there. Well, if you didn't have a rule about quorum, those 3 people might say, well, let's just have us a little meeting here and we'll make us some rules and we'll make some decisions that will affect all 20 of the club members, but they're really going to benefit us, the 3 that are here, right? So having a quorum gives a sense of fairness and right. Now, you can state what the quorum is in your bylaws, but if it's not stated, then the quorum is a majority. Now, I'll give you an example of this. I was once on the board for a homeowners association. And the bylaws of that organization, there were about 60 homes in that homeowners association, 60. But if you've ever been in a HOA, you know how hard it is to get people to come. So a quorum, if a quorum was half, a majority, say 31 of the homeowners, it would have been very, very difficult to ever conduct business. And so the bylaws stated that a quorum for that organization was 10 homeowners, just 10 out of 60. And we were always doing pretty good to even get 10 homeowners there. Now let's talk about majority. If the quorum isn't stated, it is a majority, and a majority, simply stated, is more than half. Sometimes you'll hear people say, well, a majority is half plus 1. That is really not correct. It's just more than half. So for example, let's say that there are 60 in the group, 60 in the body, then a majority is 31. Well, in this case, half plus 1 would work, right? Because half is 30 and then you add 1, so that's 31. But it doesn't always work. So for example, what if the body, the club, had 11 people in it, and you said that the majority was half plus 1. Well, half of 11 is 5.5. Plus 1 is 6.5. Well, you can't have half a person, so that would mean the quorum was 7, and it's not. The quorum is more than half. So half of 11 is 5.5, so 6 is your quorum. That's just an example of how the words matter. Majority is more than half, not half plus 1. Business using parliamentary procedure, business is conducted by the motion of a member, a motion. It's also called a main motion, or it can be called a resolution. And by learning the basics of bringing business before a body, and a few basic motions will make a big difference. And so now we're going to talk about how to work with motions. But before I do that, I want to ask, are there any questions or comments on what I've talked about so far?
My comment is those were great examples because I definitely see the difference now when you're talking about quorum and how it's important to, depending on the situation, have those things maybe in your club bylaws.
Right, right. Well, here is a key principle of effectiveness in meetings. The assembly, the group, the committee, whatever it is, should only consider one item of business at a time. I feel sure that all of us have been in a situation where you start off, you're talking about one item, you're trying to reach a conclusion on it, but then somebody brings up something and there you go, off on a rabbit trail, right? Chasing rabbits. And pretty soon you chase one rabbit and then sometimes you chase another rabbit. And pretty soon you're just way off track. So it's the duty of the chairman to keep the group on task. That's one of those principles of effective meetings that I gave earlier on. Just consider one item of business at a time. And let me give you an example of this. I was in a small group meeting the other day. We were trying to follow some rules of order, and we had a topic that came up and we were talking about it. Is somewhat complex. And so I brought up an element of this topic that kind of led us down a rabbit trail. But after a little while, I said, oh, we've kind of gotten sidetracked, haven't we? We were originally talking about X, and we're talking about Y. Let's get back to X, right? So keep getting back to your main item of business. Now let's talk about the 6 steps for handling emotion. Parliamentary procedure has this very careful and ordered procedure for how you handle emotion, for how you bring up business. And you can see the 6 steps there. I'm not going to leave this up very long because we're going to talk about these one at a time. And I think if you can follow along, it'll make a big difference for you in conducting meetings. Okay. Now, at some point, I want to suggest that you take a picture of these 6 steps for handling emotion, right? Get your camera out. Don't worry, it's going to come up later on, but don't get too bogged down in trying to find your camera or whatever. Just follow along and you'll have another chance to take a picture of this slide. So here is the first step. First, a member makes a motion. A motion is just bringing up some item of business. We ought to do this, or we ought to do that. We ought to buy this, or we ought to have this event. Now, when a member makes a motion, they need to have the rights to the floor. That is, everybody shouldn't bring up a motion all at the same time, one person at a time. That is, they need the right to speak, and the chairman gives that right to speak. Now, if you were to look at Robert's Rules of Order, there's a lot of picky rules about it. But basically, it's just common sense here. Just use common sense. For example, when someone else is speaking, you don't have the right to butt in and bring up another item of business. You need to wait until they're finished. And a good chairman will say that gently. You don't have to be mean, but you can say, oh, wait, let's let Roberta finish what she was saying, and then we can move on to something else. So the member needs to have the right to speak. No one else is speaking. The motion maker, and this is important, the motion maker should be eligible to make a motion. That is, they need to be part of the group. Let me give you a quick example of that. In our Toastmasters district council meetings, only district officers, area directors, division directors, the trio, and club presidents and club vice presidents are part of the district council. Other people can attend, but they don't have the right to speak. Okay, so you can have people sitting in the room, especially with a larger group, who, okay, maybe they have the right, they're interested, they want to see what happens, but just because they're in the room doesn't mean they have the right to make a motion. Okay, and then the motion needs to be in order. It needs to be appropriate to the context. And again, common sense rules there. The chair recognizes a person and asks them, what is your business? And they say, well, I'd like to make a motion. Well, if it's not time for someone to make a motion, then the chair can gently say, well, we've got something else going on right now. We need to hold that. Or if it's okay, the chair recognizes Charlene Grayer to make a motion. So there's a little bit to this, even this first step of someone making a motion. And now the second step, another member seconds the motion. Let's talk about that for a little bit. The idea behind a second is that at least one other person considers the motion, the proposal, worthy of the group's time. Now, have you ever seen a situation where somebody brings up kind of an off-the-wall suggestion and everybody just kind of sits there looking at each other? And do we really want to talk about this? Well, there's a way to handle that. Don't second it. If nobody seconds it, then the chairman can say the motion fails for lack of second. Or nobody else wants to discuss this, so we'll move on. Is there another item of business? It's just that easy. Now, the seconder is only saying that the motion is worthy of consideration, and he's not saying that he's in favor of it. Sometimes you hear people say, well, if you seconded the motion, then you have to vote for it. That is not at all the case. You can second a motion and then vote against it. For one thing, maybe you were for it when you started, but after all the discussion, you've decided, I don't like the idea after all. Okay. Now, here's a nice little tidbit. If a motion is coming from the work of a committee, for example, a nominating committee, you don't need a second, because a committee, by its nature, is more than one person. So when a committee brings a motion before a group, multiple people have already agreed to it. So you don't need to have someone else second that motion in the big meeting. Okay, let me stop there. Any questions or comments on this? All right, here's the third step. And this one is often skipped. After a motion has been made and seconded, then the chair restates the motion. It's then called the question. You're putting a question before the group. What should we do? Should we do this or not? Okay. It puts the question before the group and it serves to clarify what you will be discussing. I am sure that you've heard a motion before where the maker of the motion kind of stumbled around. Well, let's do this and let's do that. And, you know, the chair then kind of refines the motion and makes sure that everybody understands exactly what it is you're talking about, right? Okay, Nancy, you have a question. You're on mute.
Roger, I chuckled, Toastmaster Pritchett. I chuckled because I remember early on when you were the district governor and
Yeah.
we were discussing billboards.
Okay.
Billboards and Dietmar, was he regional?
He was a
Remember?
region advisor.
Yes, he was there. And we were discussing how to publicize Toastmasters. And I made a motion and it just got chaotic. And all of a sudden, I told you, I said, well, I'm going to move it. I'm going to remove it. And you say, Nancy, you can't move it. You can't remove it. So I had to chuckle at that because I remember that very thing. And I guess
Okay.
that's when everyone knew my name then, because the two Nancys were at it. And I'm not going to say anything else about that.
Okay, so group, you've just realized the problem when you present with somebody who's been around as long as you have. Nancy was there way back then when and we had a little bit of chaos there. Okay, so yeah, the mover, once the chair states the motion, it belongs to the group. And the mover can't withdraw the motion. You can vote it down, but you can't withdraw it. I would encourage you not to neglect this step. Let's go on to number 4. Okay, after the chair states the motion, then the group considers the motion. Now, we have different names for it. That you can call it considering the motion, debating the motion, discussion, right? That's all it is. But here we come back to one of those key principles, one person at a time. So before a person speaks, they should have access to the floor. That is, be recognized by the chair. It's the chair's job to realize who should have the floor at any given time. And the chair moderates the discussion using a light hand or a firm hand as needed. Obviously, the bigger the group, the firmer the hand you need to use. And that's why when we have our district council meetings, we lock it down. Otherwise, it can be crazy and you can have somebody like Nancy making all kinds of wild suggestions. Yeah. Now, you don't have to do this every time, but if there's significant disagreement, then you want to alternate the pros and cons. Have someone in favor of, and just ask, we need someone to speak in favor of the motion now. If someone steps up and starts to speak again, it's say, wait, let's have someone speak for the motion now. And then after they're through, you alternate to the negative side. That just really helps. Plus, think about the feeling of fairness that it instills in everyone, right? Hey, we're going to hear both sides of this question. It makes people feel much, much better. Here's a little bit more on debate. That first, the top part there is has already shown, but I think, and Robert's Rule says this, everyone should have the right to speak to a topic or a motion before someone else speaks twice. Now, you've probably sat in a meeting where one person dominates. See, this is where Robert's Rules helps with fairness. It kind of eliminates, if you tell people, hey, we're going to make sure everybody has a chance to speak before someone speaks twice. And to help make sure that happens, be proactive and say in advance. Now, you don't need to do this every time, but only on controversial motions, controversial topics. And then it's the duty of the chair to keep the debate, the discussion on topic, right? You want to have discussion that's germane, it's called. Germane means it's on topic, right? All right, let's see. Anybody have a question or comment? We're good? All right. Here's a little bit more on debate. If the debate doesn't wind down, I mean, we've been in meetings where it just goes on and on, right? Here are some alternatives that can be taken. Postpone the decision. Say, we seem to be at a loggerjam here. Let's, what do you say? Should we just postpone this to the next meeting to give people time to think about it? That may or may not fly. You can also send it to a committee or a task force. We're going to talk about that a little bit more toward the end of our session. But if a decision has to be made that night at that meeting, then another option is to limit debate. Now, you need to know that with Robert's rules, limiting debate requires a supermajority. And the idea behind it is, if you're going to talk about something, everybody ought to get to talk about it. Okay? And so if you're going to keep some people from being able to talk about it, then 2/3 of the group need to agree to it. That's a supermajority. There's different ways to limit debate. One way is to set a time to end debate. Suppose you bring up a certain motion and it's 3:30. Someone can make a motion to limit debate to 4 o'clock. So we're going to discuss this for 30 minutes, and after that, we're going to end debate, and that means you're going to vote or do something else. Or you can just set a time limit on each speaker. We're going to, and what we do in our district council meetings, you've heard, we limit debate to 1 minute per speech. Okay. Now there's this last one where it says voting immediately. That's a special kind of limiting debate. It's called moving the previous question. That says, hey, let's stop talking about this and just vote on it. But again, it's a motion to limit debate, and it requires a 2/3 majority. And by the way, you don't debate the motion to limit debate. You just vote on it. You say, should we limit debate? And people either yes or no. And you make your decision based on that. Now that's a little bit technical there. Any questions about that? We're good. All right. We're on step 5 now. We're almost done with this part. So finally, after you've had your debate, all your discussion, then the group votes. And the way I do that is I watch, as if I'm the chair, I watch for the discussion or the debate to subside. If it's kind of winding down, there aren't as many people wanting to talk, or this is important, when you start to hear the same things over and over, right? There's nothing new. Don't keep listening to the same thing over and over. Say, it sounds like we're ready to vote. In fact, you can even say, we're starting to hear the same things over and over. It sounds like we're ready to vote. And you can ask, are we ready to vote? Unless you hear somebody say, no, 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 I've got something else to say. Then you can call for the vote. As the chairman, you ask for both the affirmative, the ayes, and the negative, the nays. Don't assume. Even though the ayes sound really loud, give those nays the opportunity to say nay. That's been important to me. I've been in meetings where I was against something, even though almost everybody else was for it. To make me feel better, I wanted the opportunity to say, I'm against it. In fact, some of you may have sat in a meeting where I did that. Okay? So when you vote, there's different ways of voting. Often you use voice voting, and you just kind of tell by which side sounds the loudest. You can raise hands, you can stand up, you can use a ballot. You can use ballot cards like we have sometimes used in our district council meetings. So there's lots of ways. Now, if you're using a voice vote and there's disagreement, the chairman says, well, I think the ayes have it, but somebody else says, no, 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 I think the noes have it, the nays. You can call for something, it's called division of the assembly. And that's just Robert's rules jargon for saying we need to vote another way so we can be more sure. So if you've taken a vote, then you can call for a hand vote, or you can ask for the ayes to stand and let the sergeant at arms count. And then you have them sit down and you have the nays stand and the sergeant at arms counts. And when you're done, the chair announces the results. Finally, and this step is sometimes omitted, the chair announces the results and makes the appropriate actions to implement it. You can say the ayes have it, the motion carries, or the motion is defeated, the motion is denied. And the group can appeal that decision, especially if it was a voice vote. The chair says the ayes have it. Someone can rise and say, Mr. Chairman, I appeal that decision. Let's have a division of the assembly. And that's just calling for another more accurate count, okay? But then if the motion carries, you start to enact whatever that motion says. You form the committee, or you make sure you know who's going to do what. And if the motion is voted down, but still some action needs to be taken, then you can entertain a new motion, okay? So for example, if the motion is this club should spend $1,000 for a new TV, all right? And there's lots of talk about it, you debate it, and finally you get the idea people don't want to spend that much money. And so they vote it down. Well, then it's time to bring up a new motion that is more likely to be accepted. Okay, I think this club should spend $500 for a new TV. And you try that and see if it works. All right. So there's the 6 steps for handling a motion. Okay, if you got your camera, here it is on one screen again, all 6 steps for handling a motion. It's pretty, now that we've talked about it, that should be pretty easy for just about anyone to do, right? You just have to remember the 6 steps. Okay, so now let's put some parliamentary procedure in action. We have a few minutes. We're going till 9, right? Okay. So I've made up a sample motion. The Vice President membership would like to propose a membership contest that will need $60 for the prizes of the top 3 winners. Okay. The first place winner gets $50. The second place winner gets $6. And the third place winner gets $4. I'm just being silly. So you make the motion. And maybe it's the vice president membership. He's doing the membership contest, so he makes the motion. Mr. President, I'd like to propose that we conduct a membership contest that will have prizes requiring $60 for the top 3 winners. Okay, so there's step 1. You've made the motion, and then someone seconds it. Just anyone, assuming they're willing to consider this at all, right? If no one will second this motion, the VPM needs to go back to the drawing board. Maybe the club isn't ready to have a membership contest with prizes, right? Now the chair states the question. I hope y'all are paying attention because you're going to get to do one here pretty soon, right? We're going to walk through it step by step. So the chair says, all right, our vice president membership has proposed that we have a membership contest with prizes, and it will require $60 for the top 3 winners from our club treasury. Then you have your discussion. Now, chances are, unless your club is broke, that's not going to be a huge deal. And so you're going to have maybe most people speaking in favor of it. Hey, we've got plenty of money. We need members. Let's do it. And then you got one naysayer over here that says, $60? That's a lot of money. Blah, blah, blah. So you discuss, and the chair is listening, and he makes sure that he wants to keep things moving because most clubs only have about 5 minutes for club business at the end of the meeting, right? You got to keep things moving. And then the chair says, I think it's time to vote. And so the chair calls for the vote. All in favor say aye. And then all opposed say nay or no. Right? And then finally, the chair announces the results of the vote. The motion carries. So we're going to conduct this membership contest with prizes, $60. Let me stop. Take yourself off mute if you have a question or a comment. All right. Michelle, take yourself off mute. You're going to be the new chair.
Oh, Lord.
All right. So now I want you to recognize me. I'm going to make a motion.
Oh, Lord, I'm already messing up. So I have to recognize Toastmaster Pritchett for your motion.
That's very good. Yes. Madam President, I believe that our club has plenty of money and we really don't need to charge club dues for the next membership period. There's no reason to just keep putting money in our treasury when we're not spending it that fast. So I move that we suspend club dues for the next membership period. Now what do?
I need to clarify and make it a question. There's a motion.
Not quit, not yet,
Not yet?
not
Oh,
yet.
wait, is there a second for this motion?
Right, somebody second it.
Second,
All right, Charlene seconded the motion. Go ahead, what's next?
I have a question. I apologize for interrupting. When I've been on committees and a motion is introduced, is there not a period of discussion before voting?
Yes, we're gonna get to that.
Okay.
That's step 4.
that's step 4. Yeah.
Okay, so Michelle,
Yes.
Charlene seconded the motion. What do you do now?
There is a motion to
Suspend.
suspend the fees
For the next period, for the next.
for the next
few
period, and we'll now
That's it.
open up the floor for discussion.
That's perfect. Very good. So now you've thrown it open to debate for discussion. And there you go. Toastmaster Ramos. Now we're going to debate. Okay, so somebody debate this. What do you think? Somebody in favor? Michelle is waiting to hear somebody in favor speak for this motion.
I have a
I'm
quick
in favor
question.
of the motion.
Do I have oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I'm in
Michelle.
favor of the motion.
All right, somebody had a question.
I had a question because right now it seems like they're voting, but we're having
No,
a discussion.
we're just discussing right now.
Okay,
Yeah, you're in charge. You don't let them vote yet.
okay,
We're at step number 4, Michelle, step 4.
right.
Step 4. So somebody speak in favor of this motion.
So
I speak in favor.
I was going to say, I have never been at a meeting where a motion was made and carried before discussion. So this is a bit foreign to me.
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute. I think I know what you're talking about. Stop me if I'm on the wrong track. There are lots and lots and lots of groups that do it that way. They bring up a topic and then they chat about it for a while And then finally, somebody actually makes a motion and you go through this process.
Yes.
That is not the proper way to do it under the Roberts Rules of Order. And by the way, I understand what that's about, but I think it wastes a lot of time. Because think about this. If instead of bringing up a topic and then everybody chatting about it and discussing it in a willy-nilly way, what if somebody just says, I don't want to discuss this. I want to bring this up as a motion. And so he states the motion, but then it's not seconded. Boom, it's out. You drop it immediately and you don't have 5 or 10 minutes of discussion for something that people really don't want to talk about. Okay. So I understand what you're saying, and that is true. I've seen lots and lots of groups do it, but it's not the most efficient way. It's really hard to break people of this habit, but you can. And properly, you are supposed to bring up a motion before you discuss. Does that help a little bit?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So I think, was it Christine was going to bring up something in favor?
Yes.
Just real quick.
Okay, I agree that club members should not have to pay the $60.
All right. Very. Now remember, our motion here is to suspend dues.
Right.
Yeah. So you say, hey, let's not keep collecting dues when we've already got a bunch of money, right? All right. Somebody
Right.
speak against it. Nancy, you going to speak against it?
Yes, I disagree. I think we need to continue because we have a district conference coming up and we've got to buy a full page ad. Our club is not going to go with a half page ad. We need $100 to go for a
There
full
you
page
go.
ad.
There you go. I like that. Way to go, Nancy. All right. So Michelle, I've lost you on my screen. Let's see, where'd you go? There you are. So in practice, you let several people do the pros and cons, right? And now it's winding down. What do you do?
Seems like we have a good view of things. I think it's now time for us to make a vote.
Very good. Go ahead and take the vote.
How many ayes do we have?
Yeah, all in favor?
All in favor.
Right. And then a bunch of people say aye. And then
And
what?
how many nays or how many not in favor?
Yeah. All opposed.
All opposed.
Very good. All right. Now,
I abstain.
pardon me?
I abstain.
You abstain? Somebody's being difficult here. Yeah, that is perfectly fine. You can abstain. To abstain means just not to vote. Your vote isn't counted, right?
Right.
Right. So, Michelle, what's the last step now? You get to decide whether it passed or failed.
The opposed or the nays have it.
Oh, it failed. Okay, I don't quite get you people who want to keep paying dues when you don't have to, but whatever. Okay, whatever. Now, has my screen frozen up again? Oh dear.
I do have one question.
All right.
When you're I will comment as well. I'm having to learn like the terminology, like when you're saying in favor, abstain, and oppose. So I'm learning that. But when we're having the discussion portion, do I tell them that each person will have 1 minute to speak, or it's only going to be a certain amount of time? When does that taken care of so no one gets too out of hand?
That's a good question. You only do that if you've limited debate. And typically at a meeting, you don't limit the debate, especially if it's a small group. If it's a group of 20 or 30 or less, you don't limit debate unless you find that you need to. Okay? All right. My screen sharing messed up again. Let me try, see what I can do here. There we go. Here's another example, but we're starting to run out of time, so I'm just going to skip this. So there's the 6 steps for handling a motion again. Here are some resources that you can use. You've got Robert's Rules of Order 12th edition. I've shown you a picture here of Robert's Rules of Order newly revised in brief. So they've got a shortened version. So if you don't want the full 640 pages plus version, this one is probably 150 pages. It's cheaper, easier to read, and it covers just the most basic stuff. But I'm hoping that after this session tonight, you really don't even need that. You can also buy from Toastmasters International a chart of motions. It's pretty inexpensive. It tells you the order of precedence of the motions, and we're going to get into that a little bit more right now. So here's the bonus. As you're working with motions, you know, Robert's Rules, big old thick volume, there's 22 different actions you can take on a main motion, but most of them are rarely used. There's 3 different types of motions besides the main motion, which brings up some kind of business before the group. So you can have subsidiary motions, privileged motions, incidental motions. And then those motions are ranked in order of precedence, and you would have to get a chart of motions from TI or some other place to know about that order of precedence. But there are 8 motions that are key. They're the most used motions, and they take care of 90 or 95% of your needs. And we're going to talk about those. You can see them there in a list. 8 different motions. I'm going to talk about these because they're the ones that you are most likely to use. We're going to take them one at a time. First of all, there's the motion to adjourn. This motion takes precedence over almost all other motions. So in other words, if somebody has the right to speak, the right to the floor, and they stand and say, I move we adjourn. Wow. Okay. So do we need to adjourn? There's no debate on this. So if the motion is seconded, that is, somebody else thinks, I think we ought to adjourn too, or at least I think we ought to consider adjourning. You don't debate it. The chair just takes the vote. Okay, Joe thinks we ought to adjourn now, even though we're not through with our business. Should we adjourn? You vote. Those in favor, aye. Those opposed, nay. So that's not going to happen very much, really. People don't really move to adjourn at improper times, but I have seen it happen. But if it does happen, you don't debate it, you just vote. Should we adjourn? And it could be that Joe is wanting to adjourn because he wants to go to the bathroom or he wants to go home. Well, if the rest of the group wants to stay and complete the business, then they can vote to continue the meeting and Joe can go on home if he wants to. If the agenda has been finished, in other words, if you've gone through all of your agenda that was to be accomplished at that meeting, the chair can ask if there's any other business, and if there isn't any, you just adjourn. Why keep meeting when you've done all your business and nobody has anything else to bring up? You don't even have to vote on it. You've done your business. There was no new business. We're done. We're adjourned. The chair just adjourns the meeting right then. Isn't that interesting? Let's talk about 3 misused motions. The first one is the motion to lay something on the table. Mr. Chair, I move that we lay this motion on the table. And the purpose, most people use this to say, let's just postpone this. Let's just quit talking about it. And they mean to postpone it indefinitely, which, by the way, is a way of killing a motion. Or you can postpone a motion to a certain time. But that isn't the purpose of this motion. This motion is to interrupt the present business for some urgent reason, and then you bring that business back up later on in that same meeting. Now, let me give you an example of how it might be used. Suppose you've got a special speaker coming, but they're running late. So the president decides, let's go through the business of the organization while we're waiting on our special speaker. So you start and you're taking business, you're going through the agenda, and then the special speaker walks in the door. So you can say, all right, at this point, let's lay this on the table. We're postponing the present business so that our special speaker can go ahead and address us. And then when he's done, you go back to that business that's been laid on the table. You take it up from the table and begin considering it again. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Isn't that interesting? So laying it on the table isn't to kill it or push it to another time at a different meeting. It's for the current meeting. All right. I've talked a little bit about this one already. It's called previous question. That's the official name, moving the previous question. But this one's really annoying to me because most people don't say, Mr. Chair, I want to move the previous question. What they do is they say, I call the question. Mr. Chairman, I call the question. And they think that means now we have to vote. Not at all. I beg your pardon. These words, call the question, are not magic words that stop all business. What it is, it's a call to limit debate. It's a call to actually end debate, to limit debate by ending it, and then you vote. But to do that, to limit debate, requires a 2/3 majority. So if somebody in your group says, I call the question, then you say, okay, do you really want to do that? Because we're going to have to stop and take a vote on this. And then we can actually vote on this motion, right? If the motion to move the previous question passes, it closes debate on whatever it is you're talking about at the time, and the group votes on that question that you're discussing. But again, it takes a 2/3 majority. So let's use this properly. And moving the previous question is just a special form of this, limiting or extending debate. Anytime you limit debate, it requires a 2/3 majority. You can limit each speaker, like we do in our district council meetings, to 1 minute, or you can limit the amount of the amount of time to 20 minutes or until 4 o'clock or what. There's several different ways you can limit the debate. And then to change that requires another 2/3 majority. Suppose somebody is speaking under this limited debate and you really like hearing what they have to say, but their time is up. Someone can call to extend the debate back. Madam Chair, I'd like to extend this speaker's opportunity to speak. And again, it takes a 2/3 majority because you've already taken a 2/3 majority to say, yeah, we want to limit debate. So to extend the debate back, it takes another 2/3 majority to override that. Oh, all right, maybe getting a little confusing there. Let's talk about some very practical motions here. First is division of the assembly. We've already talked about that. If you've taken a voice vote, but you're not sure it was a close one, then you can call for division of the assembly. That's just taking another more accurate count by raising hands, standing up, or using a ballot. Then there's the motion to amend, and this is a convenient one. Let's go back. Remember that motion I brought up? I think our club should spend $1,000 to buy a TV. And you get to discussing it, and so many people are saying $1,000, that's a lot of money. So one way to take care of this motion is to vote it down and then call for a new motion. But another way is to use the amendment, right? So instead of voting this whole amendment down, you can say, Madam Chair, I can tell that people don't want to spend $1,000, so I move to amend this motion that we only spend $500 on the TV. And then people talk about that. And if that motion passes, then you've got the new motion. All right, our new motion is let's spend $500 on a new TV instead of $1,000. And you take a vote on that. And if everybody agrees, you form a committee to go out and buy the new TV. Does that make sense? Let me stop and see if anybody has a question so far. Oh, y'all are doing, either I'm doing really good or y'all are ready to go. The next one is to postpone to a certain time. Suppose you're involved in a discussion on a motion and it's just going on forever and ever. You just can't seem to get to a consensus. But you don't want to just let this thing go. So this is where someone might say, Madam Chair, I believe we need more time to think about this. Let's postpone this motion until the next meeting. And so you've postponed the motion to a certain time. It's the next meeting. Or you could do it for 2 meetings down the road, for next month instead of next meeting, or whatever it might be. This can be really helpful. So rather than just spinning your wheels, okay, what do people want? Well, we're not sure, and we keep arguing about it. Let's give people time to think and postpone it to the next meeting. Now, if you're doing it in the same meeting, you lay it on the table and bring it back up. Okay? And then finally, a fourth very practical motion is to refer to a committee. So this is another way of taking care of tough business. Somebody brings up a motion, just like I was just talking about, and you can tell people just aren't sure what to do. And so the discussion just kind of drags on and on. You get pros and cons and pros and cons. And so finally somebody says, why don't we send this to a committee so that they can investigate it more carefully? Let them go out and shop and find prices, or let's go ask some experts about this, et cetera, et cetera. And that committee goes and does their work, and then they come back with a report. And based on that report, then they have a recommendation and they put it to the group. Now the group can make a better, more informed decision, right? Any questions on any of those practical motions we just brought up?
Yes, Roger, I have a question. Refer to committee. Once the committee bring their report back, it just goes to vote, correct?
All right, well, actually, what's probably going to happen is the committee is going to make a motion based on their investigation. Okay? And remember, a motion by a committee doesn't require a second, because you've got several people who've agreed to it already. So they put this motion before the body, and the body then gets to discuss what the committee has reported on. And that discussion might go something like this. Well, we appreciate this committee. They've done a great job. They've done lots of super work on this. I agree with their recommendation. But then somebody else might stand up and say, I think the committee hasn't investigated enough. What they've said is fine and well, but what about this and this and this? There's still some more questions to consider. And blah, blah, blah. So what can happen then is either the group, the body, the whole body says, we like what the committee has done, and they vote for it. Or there's enough uncertainty that they say, we want to send this back to committee and have them do some more investigation. Or the group just votes it down. Even though the committee's done all of this, even though the committee's done all this work, the body doesn't like what they've heard, and so they say no. Right? Does that answer your question? All right. Anybody else? We're almost done. I've only got one more slide. Let me see if I can get it to come up. There it is. Now you can go and use what you've learned about Parley Pro. Any final comments or questions that anybody would like to say? Just come off mute, and you don't have to raise your hand. We don't have that many people here.
This has been very insightful for me, Roger. Thank you.
I'm glad. I'm so glad. I want it to be helpful. And you know what I think? Even though you may still be a little unsure about going out and using all of this, now you have a little bit more knowledge, and hopefully you're not going to be one of those people who says, I call the question, let's vote right now, because you know that that's moving the previous question, and it requires a 2/3 vote of people to agree to close debate on the question and then just go ahead and vote on it. And
Can
hopefully
you please put the 6 steps back up one more time?
the 6 steps, let's see
Yes.
if we can get back to it. There it is.
Okay.
I really appreciate you taking the time to provide us with this training, because I have been in committees most of my adult life, and I'm really glad that I learned that just because there's a way that people do things doesn't always mean that it's the proper way to do things. And so I'm really appreciative of that knowledge.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, that is such a good insight. Now, I do want to caution you. You have to be careful. If you're in a group of people who've been using that term that they think is magic, call the question. I call the question, and everybody thinks that's the right way, and you come in and try to do something different, you may get shouted down. But what you can do is investigate it, go get a copy of Robert's Rules and Orders, and show them that this is the proper way. And so you use this as training. It's a training opportunity. And that really helps.
Well,
All right,
again,
Lisa.
thank you for taking the time to talk to us about this.
You bet. Lisa,
Yes, I just have a question. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Since I missed most of this, I know we have it recorded, but I just want to know if you have any information that you can share, anything that you can share with us as far as from your presentation. Like a handout that we would have, something that we have at our fingertips.
Yes, I do. I've got a handout that I've used at district conferences before. And well, yes, I can do it. I'll either copy one that I've already printed, or I'll find it on my computer. But let me tell you, if you want it, you have to tell me. And I'm going to put my email address in the chat right now. If you would like a copy of this, the basics of this presentation, then send me an email. It's rpritchett@gmail.com. rpritchett@gmail.com, and I will send that to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know we're pressed for time, but I wanted to say something. I wanted to say thank you so much because, I reached out to you and you just got Johnny on the spot on it. And before I knew it, I was like, oh my goodness, because I have 3 board members on here. Tasia's one of our board members. Vakisa's one of my board members. And one of the things that I have tried to enforce is making sure that we have structure. And Tasia has been a great help in trying to help me with this process. And this really just enhanced it. And you had great examples. You gave us an opportunity to practice. So I think we all feel a little bit more knowledgeable and confident about this.
Excellent. Excellent. That's what we wanted. Okay, so one more time, if you want to get a copy of my written handout, you have to send me an email. And let me tell you, I'm not saying this just for pity. My mother-in-law just passed in the last couple of days, and we're going to be traveling soon. So if you send me an email, it may take me a week to get back to you. I hope it won't take that long, but we're going to be traveling and occupied with family matters. So please give grace and don't expect that tomorrow. Okay. I may be able to get it out tomorrow. Depends on how long it takes me to find the written document. Okay.
Thank you so much. We are out of time. Thank you so much, distinguished Toastmaster Roger Pritchett. Everyone, come off mute if you're not, and give another round warm of applause to distinguished Toastmaster Roger Pritchett for a job well done. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As I said, we are out of time, but I do just a quick reminder. Go out and go ahead and get your registration taken care of, the early bird for the district conference, April the 19th and 20th. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all.
Everyone have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Toastmaster
Roger,
Pritchett.
great job.
And my condolences.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
mine too.
Appreciate it.
Me too.